Unlike many other stories, Frieren treats you as an adult. It doesn't lean on familiar tropes to make things easy. Instead, it expects you to commence your cognitive capabilities and see that beyond archetypes lie people, not labels. Hello comrade, my name is Mahis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me. We got a beaten path to go off of. Alright, before we proceed, let me admit that you can describe most of the cast with a few words, like a cowardly warrior or a stick up his rear. It doesn't mean boo, one-dimensional, gimmick, and so on. Anybody can say that about anyone because we all have an inner core. Some a bit less than others, but that's beside the point. There is always a central characteristic that branches out into whatever else, and Frieren lets this metaphorical tree grow for most of its characters beyond what you traditionally expect. Nothing too crazy, just a few brushstrokes that make these individuals come to life and make the world itself feel like it does exist without RMC dictating most developments. I will focus on the first half of that statement for the purposes of this video, because I appreciate a lot the complexity of someone like Himmel, who at first glance looks like your run-of-the-mill Mary Sue with little to no flaws, succeeding in everything he does. However, before we go breaking down, let's quickly answer why we employ archetypes in the first place. For simplicity, basically. It's much easier to follow a story where you can quickly identify who's who and what to expect from them. Demon Slayer or solo leveling are the prime examples of that, since they focus pretty much exclusively on the entertainment aspect of the viewing experience, which would have been significantly diminished if the viewer was forced to either remember the compounding effects of specific events for specific characters, or constantly reanalyze where does somebody fall on the alignment chart. That's why you don't see Psychopaths or Code Geass reach this level of popularity, as, let's be honest, the majority of the media consumers would rather watch a decent, straightforward story than some genius-level, multi-layered gigabrain drama that you need at least a bottle of vodka and several wiki tabs open to even begin to comprehend. Deciphering the plot this way can actually be fun at times, if not for the tons of ads and other nonsense. I swear, it used to feel like playing Minesweeper, but thanks to NordVPN, who we've partnered up with for this video, I can now perform my important research in peace. It's not just a virtual private network to encrypt data. It's a whole app you can use to improve your internet experience. It's their mission after all, to make it free from online threats, censorship and surveillance. A very ambitious goal, which they go towards one account at a time. Up to 10 devices though. I personally have no need for that many, as my biggest concern is security. Like when my parents visited the area and we were going places staying at various accommodations, I still wanted to answer comments, get some non-editing work done, or order tickets to some tourist attraction without worrying about online risks. NordVPN has me covered in case of obvious threats like phishing, where scammers pretend to be Amazon with a package waiting for me, as well as protects against malware in case a funny picture I need contains something other than research. It's such an easy thing to use. One click and it just works. So if you want to give it a roll, go to nordvpn.com/mahistv and get an exclusive deal plus 4 months extra. They stand by their service too. If anything comes up, there is a 24/7 customer service and a 30-day money-back guarantee. I doubt you'll need it, because these guys got me good, and I can no longer return to this ad-ridden mess without using their app. Keeping track of all the intricacies in an already complex story is just too much work, and if you think I'm exaggerating a bit, which I do, look no further than the ability of the main character in most shonens. It's either punch hard, blast an energy wave, use some fancy item, not to mention bullshit form 2-3-10 that increases their stats by X amount. Nothing wrong with that, as you can still find creative ways to utilize them and make it interesting, yet the point stands regardless. There is a correlation between having an easily digestible narrative and how big of an audience it can reach. That's the beauty of archetypes. It simplifies the process for everyone involved. But too little of it is bad, and too much of it is arguably worse, because you don't even get points for trying. Frieren falls into the sweet spot for me, a perfect balance of I see where this is going and wait, there is more. We are not going to go into much detail about characters who are yet to be explored or pretty self-explanatory like Kraft the Monk. No doubt he has stories to tell and transformations to note on account of him being a hero of his time comparable to the current holder of the title, but for now that's all he is. A forgotten champion who is potentially OP AF and a good man all around. Fucking hell. I just can't not bring up the fact that, although we saw him for only half an episode, he somehow has more substance than certain prominent characters in other shows. Like, the way he didn't scold Ubel for killing people when she's clearly strong enough not to use lethal force in defending herself against some schmucks. For a man of the cloth and a savior of untold numbers, that wasn't necessarily uncharacteristic, but intriguing nonetheless. Makes you wonder if he on his path to the goddess at some point didn't value life as much as he does now. Okay, Jikan des, time to get into the meat and potatoes of this video, starting with our one and only Himari Himster himself, Himmel the hero. It's undeniable that he's a true paragon of virtue and ability, someone who really deserves the title of a hero. He set off on his journey Skyrim style, defeated the demon daddy, and earned everybody's respect. Typically, this archetype is reserved for the protagonist of the story and is developed throughout the whole narrative, not established at the very beginning. So, a more fair analog would be someone like Minato, who has performed a heroic deed before the show kicks off, although it's still not a one-to-one comparison. In any case, nothing groundbreakingly new here until we get into fine detail. Take the aforementioned Yellow Flash. He was, how can I say, adult-like in every aspect right from the get-go. Himmel was what, in his 30s? It's hard to tell with this anime sometimes, and you could clearly see that occasionally he would talk or behave immaturely as a young person ought to. Naruto's dad was also goofy every once in a while, but he didn't have any negative traits whatsoever, as opposed to Mr. Sky, who had quite a bit of pride in his early days, even though it was treated as a gag. He also failed quite a bit, majorly, which added to the realism of his character. First, he couldn't pull the sword from the stone. It's a goal he had for years, and you could tell how much it saddened him not to be able to wield the real hero's sword. Yet instead of letting that defeat him, he quickly bounced back by tapping into his wisdom/leadership skills and changing his aspirations to fake it till you make it. Secondly, he let his virtue overshadow common sense, choosing to give this demon a chance, which ended up ruining more lives. It wasn't the All Might admitting that there are people he cannot help due to it being physically impossible, rather it was more of what Yuji and Fushiguro were arguing about in regards to regretting saving somebody. It's a very unique situation, as normally, when a hero spares a villain, they turn their life around in an attempt to show the viewer that everyone has some good in them and that mercy can lead to redemption. Yeah, not in this case. The hero's decision directly led to one person dying and another losing everything, increasing the weight of Himmel's journey and elevating him as a character. Thirdly, he fumbled to bag Frieren. Again, in the traditional storytelling, almost always the main guy and the main girl will end up together, as it's a logical conclusion to two people of opposite chromosomal constitution going on a life-changing adventure. It's borderline criminal that some authors refuse to do that, as is the case with My Hero Aka, where we have several couples with great chemistry who have shown affection on more than several occasions, Deku Uraraka, Denki Kyoka, Kirishima Mina, and somehow none of them end up together or with anybody at all after everything they've been through. In Beyond Journey's End, things are different, because our heroic lad tried his best to get her attention, even proposed to her kind of, and all this oblivious granny did was stand there and look pretty. I can argue all day how he should have been pushier and more blunt, knowing how long it takes for her to read social cues, yet it makes sense that Frieren hasn't reciprocated because 1. It's the whole point of the show that she doesn't get this sort of things, and 2. In her long-lived eyes, they only went out on an enthusiastic walk together, which was enough to learn much about him, let alone develop romantic feelings. It's really sad. Given that he doesn't have kids and is a virtuous man, there's a good chance he never caught feelings for anyone else, so despite his accomplishments, he missed out on one of life's greatest joys: love and family. Himmel undoubtedly is the hero of his tale, yet unlike for most characters of his archetype, I can't confidently say that he lived happily ever after. His party disbanded, the world was at peace, not really needing his active service, and the elven waifu he cherished fucked off for half a century. Speaking of whom, Frieren is someone I won't describe as archetypical per se, since she's a mix of many, like the OP main character, the mentor, kter, and so on. Mostly overpowered protagonist, of course, but there are key elements that are taken from other prominent models that make her unique. For example, and bear with me here, she is written somewhat similarly to an antagonist who, due to some big plot development, began the process of becoming good. Sounds crazy, until you put her next to Gaara and see that they both didn't care about others until a special person showed them what's what, then started getting close with people in their immediate circle, and later continued to expand their connections, learning to appreciate various companies as well as the time spent with them. I understand that there is a huge difference between the two, be it chaotic evil versus natural good, or how they get to those points in their lives. My argument is that both follow a very similar emotional development curve, which is not something a common protagonist does. Another non-archetypical behavior she exhibits is being dense or emotionally underbaked, considering her age. Usually, older people in anime tend to be wise, mature, and perceptive, as living a long life often implies accumulating a lot of experience in dealing with, well, life itself and other people who are living it. They come in different forms. Sometimes it's a pervy sage, maybe a funny chairman, or a legendary pirate captain, and are often the ones who teach, the younger generation about the world as well as their own self. There are a few of them in the show, Heiter, who we will get to, Old Man Fall, and most fittingly, Denken. But regardless of their advanced age, even all of theirs combined with the rest of the cast minus Eisen and the elves is still less than how long Frieren lived, which should make her the wisest of the bunch. Not at all, since this story takes a different approach to how wisdom is collected. Humans have a limited lifespan and thus are forced to use it efficiently, which accelerates their development. More often than not, it's them who provide our immortal icicle with valuable insight on the intricacies of how the world and society works, even though they lived for only a fraction of her life. She is knowledgeable in many other areas, absolutely, yet given her biology, which doesn't encourage her to do anything really, there wasn't much of a need for her to dwell on things or deeply self-reflect. Add the fact that she had one hell of a past which discouraged social connections, plus her perception of time, and you have an individual who doesn't understand half of what other people do or why, even after living for 1,000 years. Following the granny, we have Fern. She is a rather conventional prodigy student slash tsundere, whose flavor, if you will, comes from the execution that smooths a lot of rough edges often associated with these two archetypes. Look at her personality. Yes, she's quick to pout or get frustrated just as any character of the sort, but she's also openly caring, motherly even, big-hearted and appreciative. There isn't this stark contrast between her soft side and cold side, like in the case of Taiga, who will often inflict violence on Ryuji while trying to say something nice. Instead, the mini-me always acts in accordance with the situation and will even apologize or take accountability when she is in the wrong. Her mean girl attitude is not just a quirk assigned to her by the author, it's a product of her environment. She didn't touch base with many people her age or of varying personalities, and only had stoic, emotionally stable role models, leaving her unprepared for interacting with everyone else. Naturally, she would try to mimic this grown-up behavior and have reservation for someone as immature as Stark, since in her eyes, this is not how a normal person should act. I say mimic because although Fern adopts this mature behavior, she hasn't yet developed the emotional intelligence of a proper adult, which results in those outbursts of cheek-inflation and not considering other people's feelings or situations. For example, the time she calls our Crimson Warrior a perv for asking what an undressing potion does. He literally has no clue, but due to her upbringing by a priest, her master saying young men like this kind of stuff, and him noting how the clouds look like boobs, she jumped to this conclusion, disregarding his ignorance about the vile concoction. It's kind of funny that even though she babies Frieren, accuses Stark of being immature, and acts all proper with Sein, she fails to realize how childish her behavior is. However, Fern does improve a lot after interacting with so many people, especially following the ball at Lord Orden's, where she was forced outside her comfort zone and saw a boy from a different perspective. The dance itself also helped immensely, since being so physically close to someone for an extended period of time breaks certain barriers and allows for a more open-minded communication. I love how, as of that episode, we see them interacting more with less pretense, both in the foreground and in the background. It's pretty much exactly what I was talking about during my Fixing Academia rant, where I argued that it's a good idea to show two characters getting closer by adding a few panels of them doing something casual together. That's the appeal of Fern's character. She doesn't get stuck with a certain label for no reason. Quite the opposite. She constantly evolves both as a person and a mage, even though some of her poorer qualities are harder to erase. I doubt she ever forgot how Frieren refused Heiter's request to take on an apprentice, citing high fatality rates among fledgling mages. This, combined with the desire to show her savior that he didn't make a mistake preventing her from taking that leap, clearly had a lasting impact on her. I bet this is the main source of her prickly, know-it-all attitude. She constantly strives to be a good girl and benefit the party, as there are several instances where she expressed fear of not being enough. Remember the time Fern straight up asked her mistress if she's of any real use? Suddenly, it makes sense why she feels the need to be superior and boss everyone around. In many ways, she's similar to Kter, who at a very young age had to pick up the pieces and be the adult in the room, taking care of others when she herself needed care just as much. It's not only the combination of archetypes that makes our purple-haired mage stand out, it's the depth to which they are explored, coupled with a very realistic portrayal of her character. Next, we have two individuals we can talk about simultaneously because they represent the same model, the cowardly warrior. Eisen and Stark are pretty straightforward as far as writing goes, but there are a few neat details worth discussing. Compare the best boy to the second best girl. Their backstories share some parallels, with the biggest difference being how they grew up after their respective mentors took over. Stark is far more emotionally expressive and chill because he never felt the need to hide his cowardice in front of the hero dwarf, unlike Fern, who we've just discussed. Not to say that the ex-corrupt priest was forcing her to be all high and mighty, you get what I mean, I explained her reasons a minute ago. Mr. Strong is tackling his drama of early childhood loss differently on account of his sweet personality and the lack of time pressure from the Grim Reaper going after his master. The most interesting part of his persona is the partial self-awareness. On one hand, he knows he's a scaredy cat and tries to overcome it, and on the other, he is totally oblivious to his strength. Eisen was past this point during his time adventuring with Himmel, feeling afraid all the same, yet doing what he was supposed to, knowing full well how competent he is. His apprentice, though, just embarked on this road of self-discovery and, with the help of Frieren's party, has already achieved some serious progress. He challenges his opponents head-on, takes a hit when required, and begins to show initiative in the face of terrifying foes. Yet there is one thing he is still not aware of. Just how scary he himself can be at times. A freaking dragon knew better than to engage Stark, and his own mentor got spooked by him into a reflexive counterattack. Lad doesn't know his own strengths, so no wonder when he put his hand on Fern's shoulder, the poor girl was petrified with fear. Also, I want to add how sociable this dude is. A cowardly warrior archetype is usually either super shy or excessively expressive, and it's refreshing to see Stark portrayed as a normal human being. These two weren't the only ones I grouped up. Heiter and Sein are also fairly similar and can be described as a pair of corrupt priests. There is no shortage of colorful religious characters in anime, and the word corrupt can mean many things depending on the context. In this case, we're talking about a proper, good member of the clergy who just happens to indulge in some non-priestly activities, booze, smoking, or gambling. The healer of the hero's party leans further towards a common drunkard type, and the MILF enjoyer is more of a chill guy who doesn't take himself too seriously. Starting with the former, I like how Heiter demonstrates that his shortcomings do not prevent him from achieving greatness. Sure, he was hungover half the time, but he played a key role in defeating the Demon King nonetheless. Moreover, as the time passed and after he found someone to take care of, he gave up drinking completely and dedicated his life to ensuring that this girl has a bright future. He must have been surviving on pure willpower while Frieren was decoding the book, as decades of alcohol abuse certainly don't contribute to a long lifespan. He loved Fern that much, and I'm willing to say that she saved him too in a way, since he found a new purpose in her, even fulfillment, as this reminded him of a long-gone friend. The latter priest is also interesting. Sein only appears carefree. Deep down, he has plenty of regrets, fears, and insecurities. You wouldn't normally expect this type of person to have a serious side, because his exterior is often used as a coping mechanism and can be easily switched off. Yet there he is, mediating problems between kids like a pro. He is not coping, he's content, and those skills are a testament to that, which is why it was so hard to recruit him into the party. It all comes down to realism and logic. When a cliché is written with even a modicum of thought, it transforms into a new spin on the trope. The situation with his sibling is what brought the character together for me, as we can all relate to the stupid habit of not expressing ourselves and our wishes to another person due to being afraid of upsetting them or messing something up. Now, since we kinda moved away from the main cast, why don't we quickly tackle a few more? With the arrival at Oysters, we got introduced to a plethora of characters, most of whom were pretty self-explanatory, but it's the ones who were not that we are going to talk about. Ubel the Cutting Mage. Oh boy, where do I even begin? I don't have an equivalent comparison to give you, so let's discuss what makes her different. She is not a cold-blooded psycho who relishes in killing people and stalking their love interest. There's a bit of that to her, don't get me wrong, but it's way less pronounced than in any other crazy anime girl I can think of. She is the definition of chaotic neutral, capable of both good and bad without leaning heavily into either. Her unpredictability isn't always dangerous necessarily, it simply makes her harder to pin down. That said, she is a few fries short of a happy meal. Somewhere in her head there's definitely a screw loose, but other than that, she's surprisingly human. Like, when it comes to killing, Ubel needs a reason, be it overconfidence or getting threatened, so she doesn't go around slaughtering people willy-nilly. If anything, she applies the same line of thinking to herself and borderline wishes for somebody to kill her, which is evident by her tendency to take huge risks. This sassy sorceress also displays normal behavior, such as when Fern mentioned that she can see through clothes, her first reaction was to cover up her body. Then she expresses an honest desire to know more about a person she's interested in, yes, with ulterior motives. Still, it's not something a psychopath can do, so hey, that's a good sign. Many people say, oh, she shouldn't have been promoted, it's because she's fan favorite, or that she's whack so Zeria liked her. Do you realize that Ubel killed an untouchable first-class mage in her previous exam just by walking past him, completely dominated another one both in and out of combat, learned a dangerous binding spell by copying it, and that Senza, in plain English, admitted that she's on a whole other level with her ability to visualize? When it comes to the mage exam, there is hardly anyone who deserves to be passed more than she does, and the spell mummy definitely recognized that, on top of whatever she read in her mind. Oh, and real fast, if I had a nickel for every anime proctor who failed all their students, I'd have at least 3, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that there are that many. Kakashi, Aizawa, and Zenza. These two basically perform the same exam, hers is just proportionally larger. Both are non-lethal, require cooperation from everybody, and include a fight against the test giver. Back to the contestants. Wirbel is another great example of how to write a multi-dimensional character. He's a killer, no better than the combat skirt, yet somehow appears as a genuinely good dude. I'd even go as far as to say that he's a morally grey version of Himmel, and under different circumstances might have become a hero too, only on a smaller scale. I doubt he's strong enough to challenge the Demon King, but his very visible desire to help speaks volumes of the person he is. Sadly, this is not a fairy tale, and a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Defending his home is an admirable deed, even though I have no clue what is one supposed to do when the enemy is sending literal children to a fight. The fact that after everything he's been through, he firmly holds on to his humanity is astounding and proves that true kindness cannot be extinguished. Maybe switched off temporarily during his on-the-clock hours, as this shift between regular and work mode is yet another coping mechanism commonly present in high-stress jobs like a medical doctor. Lastly, there is a character who I consider to be the most thought-provoking. Richter. I struggle to get a read on him, and honestly think that he has no idea himself. One moment, he is the slightly rude shopkeep who is happy to help an old lady for some candy no less, and the other, he's talking about putting some kids to sleep permanently. I'm almost positive he was bluffing, yet I also can't shake off the feeling that there is a non-0% chance of that being true in some circumstances. He just seems as if he's stuck between pursuing his ambitions and doing what's right, which is further complicated by his antisocial tendencies. Wait, did I just describe Nanami from Jujutsu Kaisen? It's fairly close to how he was before joining the Sorcerers for the second time, and makes you wonder how Richter will turn out once he figures out what he really wants to do. Interestingly enough, although he was quite cold and argumentative, he did adhere to Denken's words and even joined a fistfight against his will. This, in combination with the comment about Fern's staff, leads me to believe that he does have a heart way bigger than he's willing to admit, and is why I can't help but feel pity for the guy. He is a high-class mage who really knows his craft, especially when it comes to magic items, is knowledgeable in magical theory, and is sufficiently level-headed to deal with most challenges, but he got absolutely destroyed by bad luck during the test, be it facing a legendary mage or being ambushed by a first-class clone. Almost the entirety of Frieren's cast has something special about them. As mentioned before, they just feel so alive because behind every character there is a journey waiting to be uncovered. It's precisely this sense of hidden depth that makes the viewing process so exciting and what sets Beyond Journey's End apart from many others. It was I, Mahis, not disclosing the #1 best girl into the microphone. Have a great whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers. По-моему, можно комментировать, записывать. Комментировать, записывать. Ну, нормально такой инглиш.